If you were to map out your goals on a timeline, they might look something like this. I want to improve my writing skills. I want to write a paper this year, expand my network. What I like to encourage students and postdocs to do then is to go a little bit more specific and deep. What actions will they take to accomplish each of those goals? I encourage students and postdocs to take it a step further and create an action plan. The action plan takes each of those broad goals, a broad goal, for example, being that I want to improve my writing, and lays out the actions that they'll take to accomplish that goal.
So my strategy for goal setting as my project progressed was primarily a consequence of this exercise of writing papers in my head. In executing that process, you basically start out with the data that you already have, which you think might constitute figure 1 or figure 2 of that paper. And then you basically go through the exercise of saying to yourself, okay, like if I were reading this paper, like what would I want to see next? Like what do I think is necessary in order to round this out and really prove my points, even though you haven't done them? Just answering that question specifically, those become your scientific goals.
So when you create your action plan, I want you to think about the SMART principle. The SMART principle is not something specific to science, it's something specific to goal setting. SMART stands for goals that are specific, they're measurable, that is, someone could assess whether you did them or not. They're action-oriented. They define what action you will actually take to accomplish the goal. They're realistic, and they're time-bound. So they have some kind of time frame associated with each goal. Often students and postdocs do put time frames around their research goals, perhaps because they're discussing those in more depth with their thesis committee. But then I might see goals that say, improve my writing skills or expand my network. So it's missing the actions for what they might need to do, and there's no time frame. So I like to encourage them to include a start time and an end time. So that might be, I have a fellowship application due in February, and so I know I'm going to be really busy writing that. But once February ends, I'm going to plan in the next 2 months after that, March and April, to attend 3 different events and meet people in companies, in startup companies, which I'm especially interested in learning about. So defining that start and end date means that you don't need to feel guilty about not starting earlier. You can put off that goal until that start time, but you're going to do it during that time frame.
How to figure out the scope of a project is an ongoing process. Nobody's going to be perfect at it, sort of estimating the time that things are really going to take and the amount of stuff you're really going to be able to do during your time in the lab. The way that the people in my lab and I try to become good enough at this is by being really deliberate about when we check in over it. So at the beginning of every year, we have a planning meeting where we talk about the accomplishments of the year before and the goals for the upcoming year, both in terms of research and for personal and professional goals. But the last part of that meeting is a calendar that's just 1 page long. And we try to estimate, given the things that are going to happen in the year, right? Like, are you going to do, go to a conference, or do you have a paper to write or a fellowship to write or whatever? We block that off on the calendar. And then we try to think, realistically, how are these goals going to fit into the calendar? And let's give it extra time, right? So if in an ideal world it takes a month, let's give it 2. And we check in halfway through the year. And if the things that we wanted to do really aren't happening or aren't getting done on time, then we use that as a way to think about why, right? Without the main answer to why being you haven't been working hard enough. Everybody works hard enough, right? I've never had that problem amongst scientists that I work with, that they don't work hard enough, right? They work incredibly hard. So if it's not happening, then either our estimation about how long these experiments actually take is off, or we've switched priorities such that something else is in the way, or you don't have the resources that you need in order to get this done. But the point is that as you go, to be realistic and generous with yourself about how long things are actually taking, and to adjust the timeline such that you're not constantly disappointed in yourself, right? Because you were too ambitious. Set goals for yourself that you can meet, because meeting your goals feels great. And when you set goals for yourself that you can't meet, ask why and learn to set better goals.